I'm just bringing you up to date with what's happening right here in Armstrong County on 1380 AM WTYM. Today we're going to get right into it because I want to talk to somebody. My friend today for the program is from Tyrone, Pennsylvania. He is a senior at IUP, and he has been through some interesting things. He says he got thrown out of class because he disagreed with his religion teacher. So we're going to find out a little bit more about that. Today I'm welcoming none other than Lake Ingle with me this morning. Good morning, Lake.
Morning, David.
Glad to have you with us. And I am just, I'm real excited to have you because you have been, I feel like I'm in the presence of a celebrity here, Fox News. And where haven't you been lately? I mean, everybody's had you on.
Yeah, it's been a wild, 2 weeks now? Yeah, almost full 2 weeks. It's been a roller coaster ride of emotions, to say the least.
Well, you're a senior getting ready to graduate, and then you add that into it as well. And I'm sure you're like going, ooh.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to graduate with ease just because school has been so interesting for me, like my entire life. So I knew in the back of my mind, I was like, there's no way I'm getting out of here scot-free without any sort of strange anomalies.
So college has been difficult for you?
Well, it's not been difficult in the sense of like school so much. It's just been, college is an ideological, some would call it a cesspool. Most people in my family would call it a cesspool, especially my extended family. But it's a burden for people who are raised, I think, with my sort of upbringing, which is a Christian conservative home with strong family values, and you go to the universities, and you get that complimented sometimes, and it's propagated in a lot of good ways, but other times it's attacked and criticized pretty heavily. But that's the sense of where college has been sort of rough, I'll say. But
well, you kind of had it rough, and I want you to tell the story, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We're going to have him tell how he got thrown out of a religion class to boot. I mean, it's one thing to get thrown out of class, folks, but you got to really work to get thrown out of a religion class. So we're going to talk more about that as soon as we get back. We're going to take the first break. We have to check regional sports, what happened overnight, then we'll be right back with more today with Lake Ingle as we talk to him about what in the world did you get thrown out of class. Stay with us. 19 past the hour. My guest today comes from IUP. He's a senior. He got thrown out of a class, and his name is Lake Ingle. And Lake, I just want you to kind of start today and bring us up to date with how this happened. You were in a Christian studies class, I understand?
Yeah, that's right. It's called Christianity, Self-Sin, and Sacrifice. It's one of my required courses for my major, which is religious studies. But you just want me to get into this?
Yeah, let's just jump into it. What happened?
All right, so class starts, normal class. Exchange a few words with the professor about meeting the next day, talk about a project. Everything's normal, and then she puts this video on, this TED Talk, which is supposed to be in line with the subjects of the class that week, which were differing perspectives and experiences of Christianity. We look at a lot of different theological approaches, all the way from Augustine to Anselm to Luther to whomever. But this speaker, particularly in the video, was a transgender speaker who was an ex-pastor as a man and now is a pastor as a transgender woman with Launch Ministries. And in the video, the speaker talks about a few things that particularly I took issue with. Well, it was her experiences as a transgender woman, and she noted that men have the privilege over women. So now as a transgender woman, she has less privilege. Her privilege has been taken away. She's subject to mansplaining, which is a form of sexism. So she's being demeaned by men via their explanations of things, I guess. And then the gender wage gap also is something that she made allusions to. So those are some of the things that I particularly took issue with. And I didn't make anything known about it at the time. So these thoughts are in my head about it, and I'm like, all right, well, we're probably going to have a discussion about this.
So you're taking these notes. You're
I'm
writing
like working
down,
on my rebuttal, because I don't like where this is going. And so the video ends, and the professor is like, well, okay, so we have a few things to talk about. And she opens the floor up to women. Specifically, she notes it and says, we're going to open the floor up to women first. so they can have their peace. And she said we're going to ask them if they had any experiences of mansplaining, sexism, and male privilege.
Did you interrupt at that point?
No, no. But so under the surface, I'm like, okay, well, now I know exactly where this is going, and I'm not a fan. So I'm getting my rebuttal is waiting below the surface.
So you didn't say anything. You didn't interrupt.
No,
you didn't.
I was silent.
Okay.
So then 30 seconds go by, and none of the women in class look interested in the conversation. And I know the normal candidates and the usual suspects are who speak normally. And no one was talking. No one had any interest in the conversation at all. It looked like it was, it's a late class. It's like 5 p.m. People looked pretty burnt out.
I thought for college students they would just be on the rise. I mean, that'd be.
Oh yeah.
I thought the morning class would be the one that they wouldn't be responding to.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. But so I raised my hand and I'm like, well, okay, you're using an anecdotal experience, and then citing it as like it's a fact, and then we're talking about it in class, without providing like the proper opposing arguments. It enters me. I had the arguments. And she's like, well, you need to be quiet because women are speaking. And I was like, you're not in a position to tell me what perspective I'm speaking from. That is not your right to do so. And then I went on with my rebuttal, and I said, first of all, people like The Economist and The New York Times and a number of other people have disproven the gender wage gap. And I encouraged my classmates, and I addressed them. I said, I encourage you to fact check me and look up the data that The Economist has just recently posted and posts all the time about men and women in the same job with the same experience, working the same amount of hours. They make the same. Sometimes with little discrepancies. Sometimes we'll make more. So the gender wage gap is debunked. The 77 cents on the dollar thing, that's every woman to every man. Some women work less. Some women don't work at all. Some women work different jobs. Predominantly, men work more. For obvious reasons. One, they don't get pregnant for 9 months and have children. But I digress. Second,
that's what you told them.
Well, I said I didn't say the whole thing. I said the gender wage gap. Economists look that up. There's a reason. There's a different discrepancy. It's debunked essentially. And then I went on to say, I was like, and biologists don't agree that there are more than two genders. The 72 gender stuff. That's a consensus across the board. And what I meant to say, and I'll get this out now because thank goodness people will hear what I had to say. The biggest issue I take with the whole gender thing is that they're trying to say there's no biological difference between the brain of a man and the brain of a woman, that they're born as a blank slate, which is so far from the truth. But that's what I said. And I said, biologists don't agree that there's 72 genders. There's two. I didn't say there's two plainly, but I essentially said there's two. It's the traditional understanding, man, woman.
Well, you did or you did say two.
Well, I can't remember if I said there's only two. I think I said that they don't agree there's more than two. Yeah, that's what I said. So I essentially said that because the professor commonly brings up in class that there's 72 genders. The first day of class, she brought it up. So I just had to get that out there that day too.
So you don't recognize a transgender person as being a third gender, for instance?
No, I think that a transgender person, though they have the right to claim that they're whomever they want to be and dress and behave, etc., I don't believe that their biological makeup, just because you now want to believe that you are a woman but were born as a man, I don't think that is. I don't think that that's the biological truth. I don't think you can escape the biology in that sense. I don't think you can be born with the brain of a man.
All right, so are you saying that then that the people are basically that they are just making this up? That if you're talking about the transgender person,
the terms. Like psychiatrists uses dysmorphia, gender dysmorphia. So you're a woman and you believe you're a man. That's called gender dysmorphia. So, and I'm not an expert on the understanding of the quote unquote mental illness, though I wouldn't really feel the need to go as far to say that. But
well, yeah, you're bringing up this stuff, and you're doing real good at dancing around to say, well, I wouldn't talk about this, and then you bring up the name. So do you consider it a disorder then? I mean, come on, get on the fence or off the fence.
You're right. I do. It's a mental disease, but I mean, does that mean they're any less of a person? No, I don't think that they should have rights taken away or anything like that. I'm not.
So you count this in the same thing as someone who's a hypochondriac, for instance, or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that, where they're perfectly fine and functioning, but
Right.
they have an abnormality that makes them
Right.
susceptible to something else
Exactly.
in their life.
And there's a comedian I'm a big fan of who's like really pro free speech, anti political correctness, who says a transgender person is like someone who has OCD and has to tap their knee 6 times for turning on a light switch. Just because you have to tap your knee 6 times for you to turn on a light switch doesn't mean you're a bad person. But don't make me believe that every time you turn on a light, I turn on a light switch, that I have to tap my knee 6 times. And what I mean by that is when you start trying to say that it's just as legitimate as identifying as a man or a woman as at birth and then into life. Those aren't the same things. And what's really pernicious about that is then when it gets into the schools and they start teaching gender fluidity, and then that's my biggest issue with the whole transgenderism thing. But yeah,
because then the kids start to believe that is what it is.
That's normal to challenge what you are biologically, and I think that's.
Are you anti-gay?
I'm not. No, what do you mean by anti-gay?
I'm just going to leave it sit there. Are you anti-gay?
Anti-gay? No, I'm not anti-gay. If it's someone that is attracted to another person, no. Do I believe it's the right, quote unquote, correct way? I wouldn't say so. No.
So if you were working beside someone, you could work beside them the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
It wouldn't be a problem for you.
My first job, my bosses were a homosexual couple, and I looked up to those people as much as I did anyone else. They were great guys. I love those guys, and they loved me, and we had a great working relationship, and I learned a lot from them.
Be careful, you're talking about loving them now. So
well, love comes in many forms.
I love your explanations, because you go in and out of vocabulary here, and this is great. This is great. I want to finish in like the next 60 seconds or so this piece of it, though, because I want to go to commercial, and then whenever I come back, I want to go into the next part of this. So basically, you maintain you were not disrespectful. You maintain that you did not, that you weren't disruptive in the sense because nobody else was participating at that point in the class.
No, and it's actually the more participation happened after I spoke. And that's not
for or against.
Well, some people were just like, well, because I didn't. I also, by doing that and saying the gender wage gap, etc. People took that as I disagree with the white male privilege stuff, which I do. I don't think that just because your skin color, you're denoted some better way of being in this.
So
country.
You don't think that white males today get a better treatment in the workplace than anybody else?
No, and the facts don't support it.
Okay.
They show the opposite.
Hello. 23 before the hour right now. David and Friends on the air with you. I'm David Croyle. You're the friend. Just want to get our roles straight here because I have Lake Ingle with me, another friend. So I want to make sure he understands what his position is this morning. I'm David. He's the friend. Gotcha. Lake was thrown out of a class, supposedly, because he was disrupting the class. And I want him to just kind of finish that description of what happened that day. So you basically you challenged the teacher, you challenged what was being said in class, and then what happened, Lake?
Well, yeah. So I brought up my disagreements with the discussions that were being held, specifically on white male privilege, sexism, the gender wage gap, and I could clearly, anyone in the class could tell she wasn't a fan of the fact that I was bringing up these arguments. I don't know if it was because of the arguments themselves or because of the manner in which I brought them up. I would say just because of what I was saying in general. The next day, I had a meeting scheduled with the professor. In class, I ended normally, by the way. After I finished my piece about the white male privilege and such, I didn't speak another time in the class. So the next day, I had a meeting with her in her office about an upcoming project and the subject that I was going to choose. And when I got there, she said, we have to talk about what happened yesterday. And I was like, all right. So she hands me these 2 pieces of paper, one being the official form that I'm supposed to sign of my violations of academic integrity policy, and then the explanations of what I did. So the explanation is that I was being disruptive, having angry outbursts and discrediting the experience of a transgendered person, and that I was not admitting the reality of white male privilege.
Is she transgendered? Or
No, she's a biological woman, identifies as woman. And specifically, this is the line I took the biggest issue with, and it's the only reason I didn't comply fully, because I thought the other stuff was fine, like whatever, I can sign on that. One line said that I said any bad grade I received from there on out was evidence of her personal prejudice against me. She said that I said that in class. I never said those words. I never even alluded to them. So I said, if you remove that line, I'll sign this. And I'll admit to the other stuff that I'm not even guilty of, or feel that I'm not guilty of, but I'll sign it. Like, sure.
And she
said no. And I said, well, can you quote me? Do you have any? And she's like, well, I decide what you said. I'm the teacher. And I was like, all right then.
I think I would be recording class all the time.
I do now.
I would.
I'm not taking any risk anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, whatever. So, and I was like, and then I criticized the intellectual abuse of power, the abuse of intellectual power going on with her class and the humanities in general. And she asked me to leave. And I told her as I was leaving. She told me to get up out of my seat and leave. She's like, all right, we're done here. Yeah.
Leave from the meeting.
We didn't even get to the subject of my project. So as I'm leaving, I'm like, listen, I'm probably going to sign this because I don't really feel like going head to head here, because I was sensing a conflict that was going to keep going further. I was like, I'm probably going to sign this. And she said I had 10 days. So I was like, all right, whatever. I'll talk to my parents, see how they feel about it, see what I should do. And I wake up the next morning with a letter from the provost office, which deals with disciplinary action, saying that I'm barred from class. I can't speak to her directly or through a third party.
So she'd already filed something then with
she went the next step. She was like, okay, this kid's not going to sign this, so we're going to take it to a hearing. And she didn't even give me the 10 days. But anyway, so I'm going to get notified of this hearing, and I'm like, great. Now I'm going to get kicked out of this class, because that was the sanction. They wanted me removed from the class. No more apology letter. No more, standing up in front of the class and then, performing a struggle session in class, essentially what it was she wanted me to do. Stand up there and apologize for my actions and what I said, and then let all the students.
So you can't have a view in class. They can. Anybody else can, but you couldn't have a view.
She wouldn't say that. I'm saying I think it's because of my views specifically. But
okay, let me go back. I'm going to digress now and go back into something. Are you familiar with a gal in your class, or at least she says she's in your class, by the name of Katherine Bradshaw?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, Katherine wrote in a op-ed article in the Pen. And in the article, she goes over a couple of things. I asked Katherine to be with us today, and there was no response. And I'm not saying she turned me down. She may have not have received my invitation.
She's busy.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to diss her here. So just so everybody, I'm perfectly clear. But I did try to reach out to her. So I told her that in lieu, if she wasn't on the show, I was going to go ahead and mention stuff from this article, because she basically doesn't see it the same way you did. She says she was in the class, and she, in part, I'm not going to read her whole op-ed piece because it's really long, and it digresses a lot of areas. But here's what she says. On February 26, 2 days before the conflict, the class discussed the Nashville Statement. For those unfamiliar with this document, the Nashville Statement is a statement of faith published in 2017 by the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. The document articulates the signatories' view on sex, gender roles, homosexuality, and transgenderism. We spent an entire class period talking about this brief reading and some response tweets sent out by a prominent Jesuit priest. Article 10 of the document states, we affirm that it is sinful to approve of homosexual immorality or transgenderism, and that such approval constitutes an essential departure from Christian faithfulness and witness. She goes on to say Article 5 of the document states that God appointed a link between biological sex and self-conception as male or female, and that we deny that the physical abnormalities or psychological conditions nullify the God-appointed link between the biological sex and self-contraception as a male or female. As the class discussed the document, there were no melting snowflakes. No one raised their voices. Now, you weren't here for this class.
I wasn't.
What happened? Why weren't you here for this one?
I can't remember.
Because this is what at least whenever I hear you talk today, this is what I hear you espousing. But yet you weren't in this class.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Were you sick?
I can't remember.
Did you skip class?
I might have.
Okay, now we know.
I know we don't skip that class.
It says Engle missed class that day. The following class period, February 28th, Downey showed a TED Talk by Paula Williams, a transgendered woman and minister. In the TED Talk, the speaker recounted her decision to transition after she had married and had a highly successful career with various Christian organizations. She and her wife got a divorce, and Paula lost all of her jobs. To me, it was evident that this video and the Nashville statement were meant to illustrate the diverse views of genderism within Christianity. The course syllabus states that the students will be expected to engage with diverse thinkers and understand a range of Christian perspectives. Downey said the floor would be open for discussion for the women first, which you already said, and then once the women who wanted to make comment were finished, the floor would be open to the whole classroom. After a brief pause, Ingle began speaking. As I recall, the event, the pause was less than 10 seconds, although the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette article said it was 30 seconds. Downey attempted to tell him to wait his turn to speak, brought up the fact that he had not been present for the previous class period, and said that he had created a toxic environment. And that's what she said that was said. I recall that Ingle claimed that Downey couldn't just make up the rules, referring to Downey's decision to have women speak before men. Downey countered by claiming professors do make up the rules when guiding discussion. As Ingle continued to express his views, he raised his voice. He became red in the face. One student walked out of the class during Ingle's comments. Other students engaged with him at Downey's behest. One student said that that Ingle sounded highly privileged, as if he failed to understand the video. Ingle responded that his only privilege is that he is extremely intelligent. Okay, another student made the point that privilege often does not have to do as much with intellectual ability as much as opportunities individuals are given to show their abilities. I would like to bring attention to Ingle's claim that he disagreed with the speaker and or the professor regarding the claim that there are more than two genders. This is the part of the story, and she goes on to talk about Fox and Breitbart and the Washington Examiner and all the rest of them.
It's
yada, yada, yada.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into all that. But I just wanted to bring up the fact that this student basically says, you were being disruptive. You were red in the face. You were coming at the teacher very strongly. Do you deny that?
Yeah, she also says in that article that the way I responded, and I said this in the other interviews she's about to refer to, the way I acted in that response is the way I act in every response. Well, not every, but the ones that I'm invested in. So that's not abnormal. Also, I'm hereditarily red in the face. Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of red in the face today.
I can't help it. I look at my dad's face is red all the time. I don't know. It's hereditary. Look at the picture in the paper. My face is red. Anyway, the 10-second, 30-second discrepancy, sure, whatever. Time is kind of meaningless when you're actually in the moment. I think it was more like 30 seconds. And also the privilege thing. When the students brought up a discussion, they asked me if I believed in white male privilege, and I said no. I believe in personal merit, how my family raised me, school, what had happened in school, my own personal decisions, and what God has given me at birth. And then I specifically said my intelligence. I never said I am extremely intelligent. She's kind of painting me poorly there. Her ideologies.
But that's what she heard. See, the interesting thing is when I'm sure she wasn't taking notes or transcripts of everything you were saying.
No, and neither was I.
So this began. This is a recollection. This is how someone interprets it, and two people can stand and listen to someone talk and actually hear two different things based on where they choose to put the inflection in someone's voice.
Yeah, 100%. That's
right. So I understand that, but I'm just bringing this up because another student is basically saying you're all wet, man. You're out there.
Yeah.
And this
I read it the other day. I should have read it a little more carefully because I said it was fair enough, except for the red face thing. It really isn't that fair, actually. I need to read over that a couple more times.
Well, she's really going toe to toe with you, basically.
We always do that.
Yeah.
Her and I have a good colleague relationship going on. She doesn't believe what I believe. I don't believe what she believes, and we like to debate, to clash. Yeah, it's fun, but we're still friends. Like we still just chat after class and whatnot.
I'd like to see how you qualify friendship.
Well, we don't curse at one another after class.
You don't use each other's name in vain. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
All right. I'm more concerned now about the professor, and I hear from Lake Ingle this morning how he feels, but I want to know a little bit more about her. We're going to find that out in just a minute. Let me take this break. We got to take and check in with John Tesh, and he's going to give us some intelligence for the moment, and then We'll be right back. Don't go away. More to come today with Lake Ingle, 1380 AM WTYM. 1380 AM WTYM, our time right now, coming up to 6 before the hour, so I got to hurry up and get through this next segment. I'm interested in knowing more about Ms. Downey. She's the professor that basically went head-to-head with our friend today, Lake Ingle. And she has a blog, and on that blog she was talking about flying into a rage when she read a particular sign, because I guess these guys or people from a church were out there and they were holding up signs that said "smile," and from a Christian standpoint, I don't know what they all meant by it, but they did it. And this is what she wrote. She says, "I felt slapped in the face, stunned, and then enraged. Though I drove on in steely silence, I wanted to slam on the brakes, storm into that cluster of shiny, happy young people, and throw down a Molotov cocktail of sudden death, mental illness, tragedy, and suffering of all kinds into their church street party. No, I will not smile because it is Sunday. And who are you to tell me I should?" This is now by your professor, by the way. "Who are you to imply that if I do not smile, I somehow don't measure up to your understanding of what faith or salvation is?" Rage boiled within me for miles and miles, turning over the shame these young people tossed around in their insular and therefore arrogant obliviousness. This is a person teaching a Christianity course at IUP. This is the type of person. She's going to throw a Molotov cocktail. She's going to wish destruction. I mean, that line alone, if I was IUP, would disqualify her, because that, in my opinion, is a threat. If a student wrote that in a blog or on Facebook, they would be expelled from school, and they would be taken down by the state police and probably put in jail for making terroristic threats. But yet she doesn't. I have an issue with that. Mr. Engle?
Yeah, a lot of people have. I actually did not know about that article until all this happened. Once her name was in the public sphere, it got a lot of attention. And separate posts from me have been made about it that have gotten attention. And she actually recently put it up as an optional reading for our coursework this week.
She put that post up and said everyone should read it.
Well, optional. She said no one gets any extra credit, but it is relevant to this week's topic, apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're going to go back to class. You're going back to this lady's class, and you have to, because it's the credit. How many credits did you get for this?
3.
3. So this is a heavy course, so you have to have this to graduate. You're going to graduate in May?
Mm-hmm, hopefully.
So hopefully. So you have to have this to graduate, and yet, how are you doing? Because you've already went back to her class once.
Yeah.
What was the atmosphere like?
Well, it's a little more awkward, I guess. I'm fine. Like, when I go back to class, I have no sour feelings, because I just want to get the class done. And I still like engaging in conversations. Like we were talking about yesterday in class, talking about Luther, Augustine, and Anselm, and like all these different theologians. And I'm like, yeah. And I probably contributed more to class that day than anyone else. And same thing with the previous class. I like class. Well, except for the times I skip, but I like contributing. When a discussion happens that's intellectually engaging, I like to participate, and I have been doing it still. I'm not shying away, and neither is the professor. She still has to do her job, and we do both have a babysitter now in there.
You have a babysitter?
Us. Yeah, we have a person in there that's watching us to make I don't know if he's watching her or if he's watching me, but he's watching. So they had to bring in somebody from security to basically monitor this room. He's another professor.
Well, no, it's security.
Yeah,
it's security. I don't care how you. They're putting someone in there to make sure. Hopefully, they don't have a gun, but
yeah, he could probably handle himself. He's
a pretty
tough
beefy,
guy. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, the class is normal, and her and I have exchanged some emails already about my project and talked about my project, and everything's fine. Now, I just got to say this.
You have about 60 seconds, so go ahead.
So a lot of stuff has happened to her. More bad things have happened to her over the past couple of weeks than they have to me. I've gotten, hate tossed at me, but she's gotten a lot of hate tossed at her. So I can understand she's probably really shooken up by this whole situation. But she's still keeping professionalism in the class, at least from what I can see. Whether that's because of the babysitter or not, I don't know. But yeah, things are continuing relatively normal.
Wow. Okay. Lake Ingle with me this morning, giving us a little bit of an insight. And I tried to bring in a couple varying degrees of opinion here by other fellow classmates with him. And
I would have loved to have Katherine on here.
I would have loved to have had her. Maybe the two of you can come back at some time.
We might have to. Her and I debate all the time.
Just to debate some of your views.
Sure.
And I would love to moderate that. And by the way, I do have a gun.
Well, that day you might need to bring it.
I'm messing with you. I do have a gun, though. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. You just never know what we're going to do right here. David and Friends on the air with you, 1380 AM.
Shutdown sequence initiated. Shutting down.
Tomorrow we're live from Rural Valley Senior Center, and I want you to be with us. If you're in that area, come on out and be with us live, 9 to 11. If you can't, make sure you listen right here on 1380 AM WTYM. Download our free app for your mobile device, or you can. We'll try to get the Facebook Live running for tomorrow as well, so you can be a part of that too. Because we want you a part of each and everything that we do right here on the radio station and on David and Friends. Now, I always say I'm David, you're the friend, but thank you so much for being my friend, because I appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon.